Okay, today we're here to talk about Payton Talbott, the funky looking kid that really crashed into the UFC this year, sporting the hollow tattoo from Bleach and an afro. This man's got people talking about him. But why is that? Well, we should first bring up that he's got a UFC fight coming up on January 18th against Raoni Barcelones at UFC 311. And this is going to be a really tough matchup for him and another step up in competition for Payton. And I'm seeing predictions on both sides of this, but more than anything, I'm seeing a lot of people talk about it. So why is that? Well, he's been getting a lot of attention lately, and he's being viewed as a hot prospect. And at bantamweight, where we've had a lot of really good talent in the last few years in both the new and old guard, Payton is getting a lot of attention right now, and people are calling him maybe a hype train, maybe the next big thing. I think the big reason for this is his performance in the octagon so far. Not only is he winning these fights, but most of them are in pretty exciting fashion and a pretty good crisp technique, both on the feet and ground. He's got great fundamentals in striking, barely ever overextends, and really isn't scared to pull the trigger, all while remaining pretty defensively sound. And when he's on the ground, he's got some really devastating ground and pound. Every shot he's thrown is precise and everything is deliberate and has power. He's beat all the competition he's had in front of him so far, and he seems to be getting better and better every fight. And for a young kid who's already as good as he is, seems to only be getting better. This kid could legitimately be a problem for the division. So what's wrong with the kid? Well, first off, and probably the biggest hole in his game is his wrestling. Although it's not bad, we have seen him controlled and even frustrated in some of these fights, namely in his first UFC fight. Although, to his credit, in interviews, he'll acknowledge that this is a weak point in his game and something he has to improve on. And this is good to see, because a lot of fighters have too big of an ego to acknowledge this, especially this early on in their career, and it ends up holding them back. So as long as he's got the right mindset, the right trainers, he can work on these things, and it's going to help him in the long run. In addition, I'm seeing some people say that he's too stiff when fighting, because he does fight in a bit of an upright stance, and it could contribute to him being more susceptible to the takedown. However, we're seeing little changes in his stances recently, and maybe it's him getting more comfortable, maybe it's him being more loose, but he's less flat-footed, he's not slow, and, maybe he just prefers that upright stance rather than leaning forward like we see a lot of people do. And I don't see too many complaints saying that he's just a hype job, but part of that might be that he's not too crazy on the mic, he's not out here spewing that he's going to dethrone whoever's in front of him and that he'll make easy work out of the champ. He just doesn't seem to be getting too far ahead of himself yet. And when you're winning fights like he is, kind of the way a future champ should, you're going to get these comments inevitably. People are going to get excited, and then on the other side of the fence, you're going to have people complaining. But for now, he's a good prospect. He's got good fights, and there's a lot of interest coming his way. But that can't be it. He's a fun fighter with a couple little flaws. Why is he getting so much attention? Well, there's a lot of developing talent at 135 after all. Does he really have that it factor? What's the difference between him and any other prospect coming up right now? I think part of it is his age. He is only 26 right now, and he is already very good. And I think this makes people think, what happens if he does get to the top? If he's this young and he's a champ, is he going to be a champ for a long time? Or, could even be the fact that maybe he does lose right now, but at 26 you have so much time to improve, you might end up champ eventually. And either possibility really is exciting. Now in a sport, we try to root for the OGs and the legends of the sport, because we love them and they've done a lot for us in our entertainment over the years. But we really do get excited for a young, up-and-coming prospect, especially looking for some hope that they might be the next big thing. Speaking of his age, another thing that I think really helps is his online presence. He doesn't have an overly big mouth and his trash talk isn't anything crazy, but he knows how to put out content around himself that garners attention. For instance, he has his own YouTube channel where he breaks down his fights, his opponents, you get a glimpse into his personality, his skateboarding, his goofiness, his edginess, etc. He's at this age of fighting right now where it's been around for a long time. The game isn't new anymore. He's already had enough game to study. He knows how to expect from the media. He knows how to cut weight. This isn't the first generation of fighters that's had people to study from, but at this point, you're not trying a lot out for the first time. And if you have good coaches, this leaves a lot more room for the other things required to make it work in the MMA world. And even though the formula of being a loud, brash, young prospect on the mic has been laid out, he doesn't seem to be too interested in that route yet. And I think it's very easy to like someone when they don't give you a lot to dislike about them. That's not 100% true, because there are people that do dislike him. And it's not really for his fighting as far as I can tell. People seem to care more about his personality than his fighting at times. And I think it's because people either find him in a cringy way, or maybe they just remind him of someone they know in real life that they don't like. I watched an interview with him at one point where he was saying his favorite movie was Donnie Darko, and honestly, that makes a lot of sense to me, just with his demeanor and how he acts with things. Payton doesn't seem to be like a bad kid at all. He just seems to be a little edgy and likes to march to the beat of his own drums. And although I don't find anything wrong with that, I'm sure everybody grew up with some emo kid that reminds them a little bit of Payton Talbott, and maybe that's good or bad depending on who you are. Honestly, his personality might be more of a positive for people rather than anything. He's got a sense of humor about him, he's not too full of himself, he doesn't act like a media machine robot. Maybe you don't relate to him specifically, but he does seem like a real person rather than some randomly generated fighter, and I think that helps people connect with him. He doesn't seem any more cocky than the average UFC fighter, he just seems confident. Just sometimes looks bored in the octagon. And he fights confident, he plots forward, he throws hard, and he wins. Then he acts like he was supposed to win all along. He doesn't seem to be too egotistical, he's willing to admit that he has things to improve on, and I can appreciate that. There's also been a lot of discussion about what a potential future fight between him and Sean O'Malley might look like. And although I think we're still a little bit off from that being appropriate, I would love to see that fight down the line. He even seems to have a similar trajectory to Sean without too many of the controversy. Just another tall, skinny kid with goofy hair that seems to polarize the fans. I think things will change for Payton in the next 1 or 2 fights, because every time he wins, he moves up in competition and faces harder competition. So, as long as he keeps passing these tests with flying colors, if he keeps it up, he'll gain some serious popularity soon. And personally, he's one of the fights I'm most excited for in UFC 311. I hope to see him win, I hope we get more fights out of him, and I hope we get to keep talking about him. What do you guys think about Payton Talbott? Is he a future champ, or is he just another hype job that's going to be manhandled the second he goes against a competent wrestler or maybe a higher caliber of competition? Are you rooting for him, or do you want to see him lose? Let me know down below.